Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. So what are you looking at? This is a 1994 Honda ATC 200X frame that somebody put a 200S motor into. Sounds like it still even has compression, give or take a little bit. And why did I drag it here? I'm trying to kind of clean up stuff that came out of that collapsed shed, trying to get it running, put together. Believe it or not, these things take up a lot less space if they're in one piece than if they're in multiple pieces. So about 200X machines with 200S motors on them, there are two in my collection. I did not build either of these. I bought both of these. This one here was from Allentown, Pennsylvania. I bought it probably 3 years ago, around Christmas time. So I've had this one about 3 years. The story on it was this frame was actually raced, and the motor at some point kind of went up in smoke, and they put a 200S motor on it, and as near as I could tell, they could never figure out the electrical system, so that's kind of where this one stopped. So that's the story on this guy. And once again, this is the 84. This one here I've owned longer. I've probably owned this one 4 or 5 years. And when I bought this one, it had a, I don't know, 200M motor on it, 200E. It was an electric start 200S motor, so to speak. No reverse or anything, chain drive. But this one, the person who owned it ran it without an air cleaner. And the motor that was on there, all around the intake valve, had erosion, so that the intake valve actually pulled to close, actually had to pull in further and further. The valve was eroded on the outside, so picture this circumference is smaller, the diameter is smaller, so it kept settling deeper and deeper into the valve port, so to speak, into the valve seat. And eventually it didn't seal, so the thing came off as it had no compression. And if you went through a leak up test and, you know, did all the listening and so forth, you found it was leaking out the intake. And it was to the point where you could completely back off the adjuster, take the adjuster right on out of there, and the arm of the valve, the rocker arm, the arm was actually hitting the side of the valve keeper, so to speak. And that's how bad that engine had gotten. So I actually put this engine on there, and I remember having a lot of trouble with the motor mounts. And I think I did some research. I'm trying to recall, because this was a while ago. You got to remember, back then, might have even been 6 years ago. I was still working night shift, working a lot of hours. So if the projects weren't fairly quick, I would just kind of move them to their place in storage and let them sit there. So I think I was having trouble with the motor mounts, given there are no motor mounts on there, and given that there was another engine on there. I think that's where the problem did come about. Couple of other comments for anybody who gets involved in one of these swaps. 200S motors are fairly plentiful. You could find them fairly easily. They're even fairly reasonable. You could score a good 200S motor for, I mean, with the recoil starter and everything, for $200-300. Not all that hard to do, to get yourself get your hot little hands on a 200S motor. But if you're trying to put one of these onto a 200X frame, the later 200Xs, the ones with the 6 speeds, though they're kind of rare, those frames do not easily take a 200S motor. You really got to spend some time at it. The other thing is, you actually use almost all the 200X hardware. You use the mounts from a 200X, you use the exhaust from a 200X. A 200S exhaust system really doesn't go the right direction, so you have to use a 200X exhaust system. So anybody who's actually contemplating one of these alterations, make sure that you get the components from a 200X as well as the 200S. And then as you're sitting there playing mix and match, you realize that mostly you're using the 200X mounting hardware to put it on. So I dragged the two of them near each other so that I can actually look at them and put together a plan to get one of these two running. And just off the top of my head, I'm thinking that this one is closer to the bill. It already has motor mounts, it looks like. The chain's there, the gas tank's there. Ooh. I don't know, could you guys see in there? Gas tank doesn't look great, but doesn't look horrible either. Yeah, I think I'm gonna try. I'm gonna work on the 84. You know, I'm realizing as I'm going through my my Hoard that how many bikes do not have sissy bars on them, or we used to call them sissy bars. I guess you call them seat bars, or I'm not sure what they're officially called. When I was a kid, we used to call them sissy bars. You would have it so that you couldn't push the kid behind you off your bicycle, your banana seat bicycle, right? I'm dating myself, right? So you would call it that because you couldn't push him off. You couldn't, and he wouldn't complain as much, right? He would ride on the back of the bike with you because he wasn't afraid of you pushing him off. So seat bar, let's call it that, or a grab bar. Yeah, I guess you could call it a grab bar because you kind of pick it up. Let's call it a grab bar. So anyway, how many of these are missing the grab bars? The grab bars make life a lot easier because then when you're done with it, you could just kind of stand it up and it takes up a lot less space. So there we are. I'm just taking a moment to think. I've been finishing these up. Like you can see that one's finished up, but it's cattywampus because the tire's flat. But I really can't put the sealer in the tire until it warms up a little bit. The sealer works better when it's warm. So this thing just needs sealer in one tire and a headlight. I'm not too big on brakes, so it probably needs those also. But, you know, once again, I'm not too big on them, so we're not going to worry about it. I'm moving these forward. A lot of commentary I get on the channel is that I have all this great stuff and I'm just letting it rot away. Well, hopefully not. I'm trying to keep some of it alive. Take care of some of it. So there we are. Yeah, I think this is going to be the one next up for restore. So this is it'll be a good project. I'm seeing part of a wire harness there, so we're going to have to go through the wire harness. There's no brakes, though. Once again, you guys know I'm not all that big on them. Yeah, it's got a bunch of partials. Yeah, we'll have to see. I think these tires are done. Yeah, we'll go through it in more detail. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for dropping by to watch this video, to take the time to comment. Please remember to keep your feet down, your heads up, and get out there and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.